Well, Triple Crown season is over. It definitely delivered on the racetrack, one of the best Triple Crown seasons I can remember. Serious efforts from both sovereignty and journalism. We'll talk a little bit about our lessons learned from the Triple Crown season, what we might think will be ahead for some of the big stars. Obviously, sovereignty and journalism, head of the list there. And then we'll dive into a race that is brand new. It's new to Horse Sense. It's actually new to Delaware Park. It's the inaugural Delaware Derby, and it's part of a late pick four hit it split it that we have at HorseRacing and Xpressbet this week. We'll talk about those up next on Horse Sense.
Welcome back to another edition of Horse Sense. As always, I'm Bailey Armour, joined alongside world famous curmudgeon Scott Shapiro, as we get into so much this week. We have a lot to cover that Scott was gracious enough to kind of tease in the beginning of the video here. We've got some Triple Crown recaps on the docket today, and then looking ahead at the brand new Delaware Derby run for the first time at Delaware Park, which personally I think has one of the most beautiful paddocks of any racetrack in the country. Scott definitely agrees. So go and check that out. Make sure you tune into the simulcast feed for that one. But promotionally, we've got some good stuff to go along with that. We've got a $5,000 late pick four hit and split, like Scott mentioned, that's going to be on the late pick four at Delaware Park, which will include the Delaware Derby and the Delaware Oaks. So pretty good fields for both of those. And then additionally, Monmouth, of course, has their Pegasus Stakes day this Saturday. Some horses cross-entered from the Delaware Derby into that Pegasus at Monmouth. And that card is going to come with an additional 10 times first rewards points boost. So many words to get out in 1.5 sentences, but we got there together, and that's okay. So plenty of promotions. You'll see them kind of be discussed throughout the video this week. And of course, make sure that you check everything out on the promos tab in the HorseBet app or on the promotions section of Xpressbet.com. And Scott, what have you got to tell us about tournaments this week?
Well, I want to piggyback real quick on the Delaware Park. My family was my parents grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, both of them.
Oh, really?
Right near the track. My dad's best friend was he's passed away, unfortunately, a couple of years ago, but he was the paddock host and the PR guy there for 30 some years, Rich Glazier. So I got to go there when I was 17. It was like the first track I ever got the kind of hands-on, I got to go up to the race, listen to a race call, I got to watch a race at the finish line, but on the turf course. So I had a great experience there, and my first ever appearance on air was when I was 17 on after review show, but it took me a while to get back to my second appearance. I will say that, but that's my Delaware
long layoff.
In terms of what people care about more is making money this weekend. We'll get into maybe how to do so in the Delaware Derby, but the tournaments that you mentioned, $500 Gold Rush Challenge, St. Anita penultimate day. I don't really say that word a lot, but it fit there.
That's a good one. They say it at trivia every week, and I like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's overused, but it's okay. And then the closing day Santa Anita Challenge is $1,500. So that one's beefed up quite a bit to finish things out with, out at Arcadia. We'll have some Los Al coming up soon, and then it'll be the summer at Del Mar. So, we're gearing up here and kind of in the middle of some things. So Delaware Park, Monmouth, tracks like that will take center stage for at least this weekend. Well, we're going to put a bow on the Triple Crown season, as they say. I don't say that a lot either. Penultimate and put a bow on, but
you're full of phrases today.
Saving them up for big time experiences. But we're going to put a bow on it. We started Horse Sense 2.0 basically way back with the Triple Crown prep season earlier than most check in, but we do appreciate those of you that have been loyal with us and have stuck around, and looking forward to kind of the 2.0 as we'll build up to the summer meet, Saratoga and Del Mar, and then the Breeders' Cup. But let's talk for a few minutes though about what we saw, and I'm going to let you gloat, because you called sovereignty a long time ago. I wasn't against him ever, but I wasn't bullish like you, and he turned out to clearly be the best 3-year-old, as much as I wish it was the colt that I liked a little more in journalism.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw that he was moved in the Longines World's Best Racehorse rankings. He's the top ranked 3-year-old in the world and the number tied for 4th overall behind Forever Young, Kanying Rising, Romantic Warrior, and then another like Japanese European horse. So maybe a little internationally biased there against some of the US horses, but definitely, I mean, one of the best horses that we've seen in a long time. I think maybe not necessarily the wise guy pick. It's not like we had crazy prices in any of these legs. It was always probably going to be sovereignty or journalism. But I did tune into the spaces that you did, or the post Belmont thing that you and Ed did, and I got on, and immediately after Sovereignty won the Belmont, I got in my group chat with some other horse racing friends and said he would have won the Triple Crown. And then I get into the spaces that Ed's hosting, and Ed's like, "Has anyone said he should have won the Triple Crown yet?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, definitely me." I
He
still
doesn't.
think that that's true, despite what Ed
It's just not fair to say though. Like I feel like it's kind of like, I mean, I have no way to knock the horse now.
Yeah,
He beat journalism on the square, who's like, let's not make any. I think journalism wins the Triple Crown most years, right? I mean, he ran as well in
obviously.
all those races. It wasn't like he didn't fire because he was tired, right? There was just,
Yeah.
just a horse better than him. I wasn't. You definitely weren't even considered. I was considered, but not alive for Secretariat and Sham. But kind of the way I hear about that, maybe somewhat similar, although not the dominance. I mean, Sovereignty didn't beat
Right.
journalism
So
like that.
far.
There was some, but yeah, it's impressive. What he did, and that last eighth or quarter of a mile, whatever. I mean, that was as
Great.
good as I've seen in ages. I think he's the best 3-year-old. I think of the two best 3-year-olds since this is a weird one because he didn't win any Triple Crown races. But I thought when I was in Kentucky and covering the Derby and really, I thought Epicenter was probably the best 3-year-old I saw.
Oh, so
Um,
good.
Justify, I didn't see as much. It's not really the same. He was kind of a freak. We got questions about a lot of all that.
Yeah.
I don't want to knock him, but outside of that, I mean, I just, outside Epicenter, I just kind of think that, that these two are clearly the best two, and one was just better than the other. But, where do you think they're going to? I mean, I know you maybe not look into this kind of stuff as much as me, especially this far out. But you have any thoughts on where you think they're going to? I know Sovereignty's probably going to go to the Travers, and Bill said. Bill Mott said Jim Dandy if he runs
Mhm.
before it. But do you think if you're journalism, do you think you got to, if you're them, do you try to hide until the Breeders' Cup, or is there reasons to believe, that you can make up that ground, or maybe you'll get better and Sovereignty won't?
I don't think there's any reason to hide, especially on the West Coast. And I know that this is something we in general in the racing community, not just you and I, have discussed at like what the rest of their year is going to look like. I mean, I don't think you have to hide. Clearly, you have the second best of this entire crop of the field. I mean, best on some days, maybe not the best on the other days. It's not like he lost, like you mentioned, it's not like he lost by some crazy margin to Sovereignty. And I think we definitely have to include Baeza in this top crop, who almost didn't even get into the Derby, but then drew in on the AEs. But this is what, like the 4th time the Derby trifecta has been repeated, or the Triple Crown trifecta has been repeated. And the
Let
last
me.
time we saw that was with Secretary and Sham.
Well, what do you think? Does Baeza, is he just a cut below? Or, I mean, because it is getting to the point where he has raced as much of these horses. Yeah, Sheriff's is a little more patient, but the upside thing is starting to maybe lose its his ceiling seems to be limited now. We've seen him twice now, both over
Yeah.
and off track, and he was really. What did you make of him being so keen early in the Belmont?
I think I tweeted right before the race went off that he and Sovereignty both look super keyed up in the, like, very keen, very keyed up, very strong in the post parade. Almost a little bit too overworked, like a little bit too sharp. Obviously, they were able to put it together when the race went off, but I am definitely interested to see what he can do if he's able to relax a little bit and then run on a fast track. Like we've seen him, like you said, on the off track twice now. It's been absolutely disgustingly gross and muddy outside both of these big days, which I think is funky. But I feel like we haven't really seen him in a a little calmer perspective on a faster track on like a more sunny kind of classic day, So I think for that point, he's a little bit unpredictable for me. I don't think that I've really seen him develop that edge that I would have liked to see in a horse that's maybe more mentally mature or ready. I definitely think and this is an absolute standout to Puka, who has produced these horses, Baeza being the next one in that Mage Dornoch line. But I think I don't know. I don't think he's quite as similar to his older brothers as some people might think.
Yeah, I think his ceiling, and I also think at this point, who knows how the jocks situation is going to go. I don't want to get into it too much, but Pratt might find it. Pratt might end up on a different horse. That's all I'll say. Like, he's been on Baeza twice. I mean, who knows if I would assume Umberto's going to stay on journalism, but the logical alternative is Pratt. He's ridden plenty for McCarthy. He's got the connect. And he clearly would want him. So we'll see how that all shakes out. But good stuff. And I mean, is there anybody? I think we saw in the Matt win. It's not Triple Crown, but I think to me, I don't know if you saw that race or got to recatch it. I know it was on a Sunday, and you were off, but I think that race pretty much showed me that those horses were a cut below these top few. Maybe you can make the case, Baeza was on the level of a Burnham Square at East Avenue. They didn't have this good of a trip. So probably not. But do you agree with that, or do you think any of those in Kentucky maybe can move forward in the summer?
I think that you're definitely right about them being a cut flow, kind of a wheat from the chaff situation where we saw horses not necessarily defect, but opt for the Matt win instead of the Belmont. And then some of the Delaware horses have run against some of the ones from that Matt win field. So I think there's definitely a pretty clear line of separation between that like mid-tier Derby Triple Crown crop that we'll continue to see going through the rest of the season here. But I mean, there are other grade one races like the Pennsylvania Derby, that they can go on and win. Hell, maybe we'll even see Baeza win something like that. But I think that you're definitely right that it's pretty much those three, and then everyone else is like 4 lengths behind. No pun intended.
I won't tell Griffin that you said so.
That's okay. He'll see it on Twitter anyway.
Yeah, I agree. But so, well, I mean, the 3-year-old season is over. I'm already excited for the next Derby. I mean, that's my favorite part of horse racing. I love the everyday product. I love a lot of meets, but the build up to the Derby, following those horses is my favorite thing. But we've got some of the third probably tier, to be fair, to talk about up next in the Delaware Derby. What do you say?
Let's do it.
Well, it's not a Triple Crown race, Bailey, but the Delaware Derby is a fun one this week. It's actually this weekend, Saturday, of course. It's actually the first of its kind. That's why we call it inaugural early on. $200,000, 3-year-olds. And it actually comes before a historic race, the Delaware Oaks, which is part of that Pick 4 promotion that we both discussed. But this is a pretty fun race. I actually think that there's a beatable favorite in here in Admiral Dennis. But before we get into a little more of the race, I just kind of wanted to continue talking about the pace of a race. And I just think, for those of you that have been following racing for a while, betting on races, you're aware how much that means. But, you often, if you're newer to the game, or a numbers guy maybe, or girl, for something like that, you could be fooled once in a while by the numbers, or in general, looking at the past performances. If a horse is jogging on the lead with nobody, pressing them versus the same exact fractions with horses pressing each other, that's very different. That's why I think watching races can be beneficial. But overall, even just looking at a pace projector or getting a feel for it is always the first thing I do, even before I look at a favorite and try to beat them. So the Delaware Derby doesn't really pop out as a major pace scenario, but or like obvious, this is going to be crazy pace or this is going to be very slow. But when I look at it, Bailey, I don't see a ton of horses that are going to be forward. So it kind of feels to me like a race where, we'll get started talking about it, where maybe being forward will be advantageous in the mile and a 16th.
Yeah, I think you're right. It looks like, and this is a pretty full field, which is definitely nice. You've got plenty of options on ways that you could play this race. You probably got, what would you say, 3 or 4 horses that are going to try to send for the lead in here. I would say 3 at most, depending on who actually stays in this race versus
Yeah.
who is also cross-entered in the Pegasus at Monmouth. Do you know, I think there are 4 in here that are cross-entered. Do you have
I
any
think
inside tips on who's going to go here or not?
I think I saw Matt Dennerman's tweet and also the Paco Lopez factor. I'm pretty sure Kentucky Outlaw who's cross-entered, will be entered here. I
I hope
think
so.
I'm pretty sure that's going to happen. National Law, I think, is still up for grabs, and then Barbadian Runner, I think, is going to run here, and then Late Night Call is actually entered here against the boys, and then in the Delaware Oaks. So we'll see how that goes. And that's the one that maybe can be a pace player that may or may not be in here to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I would probably like to see her in the Oaks versus in this one. There are maybe some other horses that I'm more keen on this one. I think we've landed on the same top choice in this one over beating that favorite, the Cox horse, Admiral Dennis, who was 4th last out in the Bluegrass against some of those horses that we just saw in the Matt Win that we mentioned in our last segment. When it comes to pace perspective, we saw him early on maybe they tried to make an early run at the Derby Trail with him in the Rebel and some others. Luis Saez rode him a little bit more forwardly than some of the other jockeys who have ridden him. And this is now his 5th different rider in 7 lifetime starts. For me, that poses the question of what is his actual true pace going to be like? I mean, I feel like you've had 5, not necessarily 5 totally different styles, but 5 different people piloting this horse, who's one of the only stronger closers. But how strong of a closer is he actually based on who's in the irons that day? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think he has a lot of speed because you look at 2 of the most aggressive send riders in the game in Florent Drew and Luis Saez, and they're the ones that have been on the majority of his starts. So I wouldn't expect them to be involved, and I wouldn't expect Luan Machado who will be aboard him today for the first time, to your point. I wouldn't expect him to try to get more speed out of them than those guys did. And then I think, you watch the Bluegrass, and that's a race. We talk about pace and capping the race shape and whatnot. That's a race where, regardless of how you handicapped it, if you watch the race, that was a race that, for the most part, benefited horses coming from off of it. Yes, East Avenue laid down the law and kind of speed burn other horses, but the rest of them that were chase mode were really not there at the end, per se. River Thames, sort of off the pace, middle type trip. But Burnham Square, who won the race, had the very similar trip to Admiral Dennis. He's obviously, he would be a huge favorite in this race, Burnham Square. I just haven't seen it. This is a horse that I thought, he got hammered on debut at Churchill, which doesn't always happen for Brad's Cox horses on debut. When it does, though, they're very live usually. Terrible trip.
Yeah.
And then came back and ran huge. I thought he was legitimately one of the top contenders for the Brad Cox barn in terms of the Derby picture. Well, turns out they didn't get too much out of their stock this year, but this is a horse that I think is amongst those. And then you add to the fact that, I mentioned, and I don't know, you kind of agree that there's just not going to be a ton of speed, so he's going to probably have to earn it.
Can we take a second and talk about the number 2 Academy from the Graham Motion barn with Irad Ortiz aboard? And this is a horse that screams turf to me all day long, but they've got him entered here in this dirt race. He's been training at Fair Hill and is a $310,000 sales purchase as a yearling by Oscar Performance, who stood for $45,000 that year. You don't really see 6-figure Oscar performances like that at a yearling sale. So the pedigree, the dam is a half sister to a French Group 2 and 3 winner and a Group 1 placed horse mare named Tarif. So the pedigree says turf all day. They run him on the all-weather at Turfway, and he didn't really like it. Won his maiden by crossing the finish line first, but then got DQ'd, went to Turfway, hated the synthetic there, and then finally picked up a win. But now they're entered here in this dirt race when it feels like there are other options in the Mid-Atlantic circuit in the summer for turf races. Can you honestly tell me what the heck they're thinking with this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's as simple as they thought this horse, like you and like by the pedigree, was a turf horse so much that Graham had him on the ship up north to Saratoga, gave him one shot, didn't run well. They keep him on the turf, of course, and he's been fine. And then they sent him to the all weather. They wanted to keep him on the turf in the last start, but it got washed off. you see this a lot where, wow, maybe we've got something on the dirt here. We got to try. That's where the big money's at. I don't think there's much
Yeah.
more to it than that. Other than I will say, Tumbarumba comes to mind. I think there's other, but Oscar performances have performed. I'd have to look into it more. I wasn't prepared to answer, but
They're
there's
picking up very much.
yeah, they've been, it's all turf if you look in the family, but they've definitely taken to the dirt more. And I think he's a fade because I think IRAD is going to take too much money. The IRAD factor will keep him
Too
from
much
being
money.
any value. Let's talk about one more horse though, and you mentioned it. I'll lead you into it. I think he might be sitting right off of Academy, or maybe he'll go to the lead. Maybe he's kind of a whack job, but he is talented, and it's number 6, Kentucky Outlaw.
Yeah, this is a 3-for-4 lifetime horse, so I think is one of the better placed ones, especially in this post position. And we can disagree on post position, and that's fine. But the 6 is the best one, and that is indisputable.
16th, it matters.
Yeah, thank you. Finally,
first turn.
yeah, you've got that that run up here at Delaware in the mile and 16th. I mean, this is a solid speed and pace horse, especially for this field, and especially under Paco Lopez, who we know is definitely not scared to ride him, I will say. That's my overall top pick in this race is Kentucky Outlaw, and I'm going to play him with the 5 Sacred Thunder underneath him. I feel like that's a horse that just really wants to hit the board. I would not play him in the win pools, but I would include him in my other wagers with Kentucky Outlaw on top.
Yeah, and if you look, I mean, horse for course, if you believe in that, I mean, he's run at Delaware 5 times and hit the board in all 5. To me, Kentucky Outlaw has been a horse that I've been following for a little bit because, I've been capped the Federico Tessio, and so I went back and watched his previous 2 races at Parks, and they were awesome. So you just kind of wondered what was going to happen. Well, he got hammered. He just he hasn't figured the game out mentally. Even in his last win, they put the blinkers on him. He broke slower than normal, or slow again, and then he was goofy. And I mean, the fact that he won that race tells you how talented he was. Yeah, for those of you out there that haven't watched the Long Branch, go back and watch it if you want to understand where I'm coming from. It was a much the best effort, as they say. So I'm looking forward to seeing Kentucky Outlaw, and I think Paco being on him with the blinkers for a second time is going to be a major edge. If he can get out of the gate, I think he's going to have him exactly where he wants him.
As always, thank you so much for watching another edition of Horse Sense. I'm Bailey Armour and was joined alongside the one and only Scott Shapiro as we covered some lessons from this year's Triple Crown and then a look ahead at the Delaware Derby at Delaware Park on Saturday. Make sure that you're opting into all of these promotions that we mentioned on Xpressbet and FirstBet, that $5,000 late pick 4 hit and split on the Delaware Park card, and then 10 times points at Monmouth for their Pegasus Stakes Day on Saturday. Don't forget to let us know in the comments how you think the Delaware Derby is going to play out for its inaugural running and what you thought about sovereignty and journalism in this year's Triple Crown.